Let's get going, shall we? Good afternoon, everybody. It's 1:30 here in Geneva. Good afternoon to everybody in Europe and Middle East and Africa. Good morning to everybody in the Americas. Welcome to this session, which is brought to you by the German Federal Ministry of Economic Cooperation and Development in association with the Global Alliance for Trade Facilitation. It's a pleasure to be with you today and have the opportunity to moderate this discussion, which I think is going to be very interesting because it combines two fascinating topics. The first one being food systems, which are so incredibly important for nothing less than humanity. And secondly, digital trade processes, which is a domain in full expansion with some success stories, but for which I believe a lot more can be done. And it would be great to see today what can be done and what has been achieved so far. We have a great panel today with us, unfortunately, not here in person, so I feel a bit lonely here, but we're here in spirit. Starting with Beth Bechdol, who is the Deputy Director General for the Food and Agriculture Organization, FAO, in Rome. Welcome, Beth. We have Stephan, who is the Head of Division for the Trade Policy for the German Federal Ministry of Economic Cooperation and Development. We have Mr. Abdoulaye NDIAYE, who is the Chef de la Division Législation Phytosanitaire et Quarantaine des Plantes au ministère en charge de l'Agriculture du Sénégal, from Senegal. Welcome, Abdoulaye. And Sarah Thorn, who is the Senior Director for Global Government Affairs for Walmart Stores Incorporated in the US. So as you will see, we have representatives from various parts of the trade ecosystem, and hopefully we'll be able to get a great discussion with various angles and dimensions to work through the world of e-phytosanitary certificates. Firstly, what I would like to do is pass the virtual mic over to Stephan, who will provide us with some opening statements. Stephan, I pass it over to you.
Thank you so much for your kind introduction, Philip. Let me start by saying that we are very pleased to host this session. I would especially like to thank the WTO for organizing the public forum and providing a space for this and many other important topics. And my thanks also go to all who are contributing, including our distinguished panelists and the audience. I think the issues we talk about in this session are indeed of common interest for all who are present. In my opening remarks, I would like to try to provide some context for our session. Our panelists will then zoom in the technical solutions and what these mean for different stakeholder groups. Mainly, I would like to share 3 points: COVID-19 and trade, the relevance of trade facilitation, and how this is linked to Germany's Aid for Trade priorities. On my first point, I will briefly recap where we are coming from. As a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, trade in merchandise goods declined by 5.3% last year. This was perhaps better than expected because many governments took quick action and provided financial and other support. However, there are strong regional disparities. Poor countries in particular face huge challenges, and COVID-19 continues to be a severe threat to the outlook for trade. After the breakout of the COVID-19 pandemic, the first reaction of my ministry was to launch an immediate support program. Of course, the largest part was directed to health and stabilization of food supplies. But it also included components on structural issues, to keep companies in business, and to preserve as many jobs as possible. Trade facilitation, and this is my second point, was part of this more structural type of interventions. You will all remember stories how trade came to a halt. Customs authorities around the world came up with quick solutions, such as using scanned trade documents instead of paper-based documents. Trade facilitation was crucial to keep trade flows going. For us, trade facilitation was important already before the pandemic. Our goal is to reduce the time and cost of trade for developing countries. For that reason, we strongly support the implementation of the WTO Trade Facilitation Agreement, and we are part of the Global Alliance for Trade Facilitation. Our projects with the Global Alliance for Trade Facilitation and with other partners show that this works. In a project in Colombia, we have seen $8.8 million in savings in 18 months for importers alone. In a project in Montenegro, we have seen a time reduction of about 40% for express consignments. With a lot more ongoing projects, we expect that this will contribute to better investment conditions, more jobs, and ultimately more resilience and prosperity in our partner countries. On my third point, trade facilitation is part of our strategy on aid for trade. We have launched our current strategy here at the WTO at the Global Review 2017. Germany, being the second largest bilateral donor on aid for trade, is a keen contributor to this forum. Trade facilitation is one of the 6 priorities in the German aid for trade strategy. Another priority is regional economic integration. And in fact, we are convinced that trade facilitation and regional economic integration go together. The AFCFTA, the African Continental Free Trade Area, is an excellent example. The AFCFTA is about realizing the benefits from regional economic integration. We think it deserves the full support from Africa's international partners. Trade facilitation is inherently part of this, and we are ready to provide assistance to mainstream and digitize trade processes for the full implementation of the AFCFTA. To sum up, one theme of the public forum is enhancing resilience beyond COVID-19. I'm convinced that trade facilitation will play an important part for this. Therefore, and in relation to the topic of our session, my message to you is, let us use the momentum we have now and work together for the full digitization of trade processes to enhance the resilience of trade and of food systems. We will hear now from our panelists how this can be made to work. I'm myself looking forward to learn from their expertise, and by this, therefore I hand over to our moderator, Philip. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Stephan. And as the director of the Global Alliance for Trade Facilitation, let me seize this opportunity to thank Germany, along with the United States, Canada, and Denmark for supporting the Alliance over the past 5 years. It is absolutely fantastic to have you as a donor, but also as a partner in achieving our objectives. So let's get into the heart of the topic, of the subject, which is, food supply chains, automation and digitalization, and in particular, the specific case of phytosanitary certificates. A couple of weeks ago, I was asked to make a presentation, and I felt it was necessary to show how many documents are present in the supply chain. And I found a very good resource that came from the UNECE, which actually went through the trouble of listing every single document that is in the supply chain. And there were over 120. And within this list of documents, there was one little document, which was a phytosanitary certificate. And I thought, well, it's absolutely incredible that so much progress has been done in that field, and somehow a bit less in the others, but that provides an opportunity. So we're leading the way in this domain. As the Global Alliance, we have always been focused on identifying blockages in the supply chain and formulating practical, focused solutions to be able to facilitate trade one step at a time. And rapidly, we identified the work that has been done by the International Plant Protection Convention under the FAO. And we built a working partnership together to be able to boost the adoption of automation of phytosanitary certificates. And so hopefully we can get into more detail of this this afternoon. I will pass over the mic to Mr. Abdoulaye NDIAYE. Monsieur NDIAYE, on va passer en français. Vous êtes le représentant au Sénégal du ministère pour les affaires pour l'agriculture, et vous êtes en fait ce qu'on appelle le ONPV, n'est-ce pas? L'Organisation nationale pour la protection des végétaux. Donc, pouvez-vous, pour commencer, nous donner un aperçu du travail qui est effectué au Sénégal dans ce domaine, et peut-être partager avec nous certains défis auxquels vous faites face et certains défis que vous avez réussi pour lesquels vous avez eu du succès. Je vous passe le microphone, Monsieur NDIAYE. La parole est à vous.
Voilà, merci beaucoup, Monsieur Philippe. Je voudrais d'abord me féliciter, en tout cas, de l'organisation de ce forum que nous estimons très important, parce que dans le cadre de la digitalisation des procédures phytosanitaires, donc faciliter le commerce international des produits agricoles dans ce contexte de résilience, en tout cas suite à la pandémie de Covid-19. Donc, en introduction, faut-il rappeler effectivement que les normes commerciales, également sanitaires, qui gouvernent, disons, le commerce international, ne doivent pas être pour autant des freins, des obstacles. Donc, on doit veiller à ce que ça soit véritablement efficace, que les puissent échanger dans des conditions vraiment favorables. Elles sont certes d'une importance, mais ne doivent pas gêner le commerce international. Aujourd'hui, la reconnaissance de l'accord sur les mesures phytosanitaires de l'OMC, donc à ces normes de la CIPV, les rendent du coup assez. C'est fort donc de transparence, de sécurité dans les échanges commerciaux, la digitalisation à tous ses sens, et encouragée en tout cas aussi bien par l'OMC à travers l'accord de facilitation des échanges que la CIPV, donc à travers la solution e-phytogénèse. Comme élément de contexte toujours, en tout cas nous au Sénégal, ça nous a beaucoup intéressé. Le Sénégal a ratifié et signé et ratifié les deux accords, que ce soit l'accord de facilitation des échanges, la convention de la protection, si bien que l'Alliance mondiale de facilitation des échanges et la direction de la protection des végétaux mettent en œuvre un projet de facilitation des échanges qui consiste à la digitalisation du processus phytosanitaire, automatisation des importations de produits agro-industriels, l'application de la solution phyto, donc la certification électronique digitalisée. Les objectifs, donc, c'est de le Sénégal d'un système national générique de gestion des certificats phytosanitaires électroniques permettra à la DPV, à l'ONTV en tout cas, de gérer de manière digitalisée une partie importante du processus de certification phytosanitaire associé aux exportations de produits végétaux à destination des pays qui utilisent des produits phyto. Automatiser également les processus d'importation de produits agro-industriels. Bon, comme situation de référence, on peut dire que déjà le volume de travail qui nous incombe est très, très important. On peut lier en tout cas à ce déficit de dématérialisation de nos procédures, en tout cas de certaines procédures. Et actuellement, il faut reconnaître que nous travaillons avec une multitude de paiements, petites et moyennes entreprises, plus de 300 paiements qui sont enregistrés au niveau de l'ONPV pour les activités d'import-export de produits agricoles. Et annuellement, nous délivrons pas moins de 30 000 documents phytosanitaires papier, pas moins. Vous imaginez un peu tout le volume de travail que cela représente, cela demande. Et tout cela a été géré par une procédure physique. Vous voyez un peu comment il y a des contraintes à ce niveau. Les procédures de traitement et de délivrance de documents phytosanitaires sont essentiellement chronographes, donc ça consomme beaucoup de temps, effectivement. La durée de traitement est plus ou moins longue, avec des risques de falsification des documents, de notification récurrente de notification de certificats par certains partenaires commerciaux. Et là, je voudrais encore m'arrêter un peu, parce qu'en réalité, avec, disons, le système manuel physique, c'est vrai qu'il y a non seulement la falsification, mais nous passons une bonne partie de notre temps à authentifier des certificats phytosanitaires, par rapport en tout cas à certains pays. Ce qui n'est pas vraiment bon, en fait, ce qui doit nous pousser en tout cas à profiter de cette digitalisation pour rendre le commerce un peu plus sûr et vraiment transparent. Parce qu'aujourd'hui, la valeur de nos exportations pour juste filière horticole et arachidière, ça fait plus de 210 milliards de francs CFA par année pour le Sénégal. Donc, c'est des filières assez importantes et on gagnerait à digitaliser davantage toutes nos procédures pour pouvoir nous positionner davantage sur les marchés internationaux. D'où l'importance, en tout cas, de la digitalisation de nos procédures. Présentement, nous sommes en train déjà de bien apprécier, en tout cas, les avantages, les bienfaits de la digitalisation à travers des simulations qui sont déjà en cours, avec l'appui, en tout cas, de l'Alliance mondiale de facilitation des échanges. On a maintenant la possibilité, déjà dans les simulations, de faire des demandes en ligne de certificat phytosanitaire par les entreprises. Là, déjà, c'est un grand acquis. Également, la vérification et la modification, si nécessaire, de la demande par l'opérateur ou par les inspecteurs de la DPV. Là également, c'est important. Et même, on pourrait également faire des prises de rendez-vous pour une inspection à travers le système, ce qui nous prenait d'habitude tout le temps. Également, l'approbation de la demande de certificat par les inspecteurs de la DPV directement. Il y a possibilité d'imprimer le certificat et envoi des phytos au niveau du hub de la CIPV, ce qui est vraiment intéressant. Là, ça montre un peu la sévérité du système que nous voulons mettre en place et qui est bien avancé. Il y a également la possibilité de recevoir des certificats phytoélectroniques en provenance du hub. Annulation de également stockage des certificats. Voilà, donc en somme, beaucoup de possibilités. Donc, en termes d'avantages, la mise en place de la solution e-phyto et de l'automatisation des importations de produits agro-industriels vont permettre de sécuriser le commerce en évitant les erreurs, les fraudes au niveau des certificats phytosanitaires et permis d'importation. Également, réduire les coûts pour l'exportation ou l'importation de produits agricoles, la rapidité dans l'exportation commerciale. Il y a également la réduction considérable du temps de dédouanement, la diminution surtout de réclamations dues au retard de livraison ou à la qualité douteuse de certains produits. Également, il faut signaler les impacts sur le coût de production de tonnes de papier imprimées, stockées annuellement. C'est véritablement une aubaine que nous allons effectivement saisir. Également, il y a la simplification de la communication entre les autorités compétentes et les opérateurs. Voilà. Présentement, nous sommes dans les renforts pour vous dire que nous sommes assez avancés dans la procédure. Nous sommes pratiquement dans le renforcement des capacités, la formation des parties prenantes et des tests de simulation pour la gestion du changement. Là, donc, il y a tous les opérateurs avec qui nous travaillons, aussi bien le dispositif phytosanitaire que le secteur privé. Nous sommes en train de faire des simulations et chacun doit assumer son rôle d'ici décembre 2021 pour nous permettre à terme, en décembre 2021, d'envoyer le premier certificat phytosanitaire électronique officiel. Là, ce sera une très grande révolution pour le Sénégal. Les autorités, en tout cas, nous ont orientés effectivement vers la digitalisation, dématérialisation. Ce qui nous permet encore de saluer vraiment cet appui de l'Alliance mondiale de facilitation des échanges. Et par la même occasion, nous sommes en train de dérouler une évaluation des capacités phytosanitaires avec l'outil développé par la CIPD, ce qui nous permet certainement d'asseoir durablement, en tout cas, la dématérialisation de nos processus phytosanitaires. Toujours dans ce même ordre d'idée de facilitation des échanges, il y a un portail d'information commerciale qui est lancé au Sénégal et répond également à la disposition de l'article 1 de l'accord de facilitation des échanges adopté en décembre 2013 par les membres de l'OMC et entré en vigueur en 2017. L'objectif étant de trouver en un seul endroit toute l'information commerciale détenue par les différentes administrations, les usagers et autres investisseurs, quel que soit le lieu de résidence, peuvent donc accéder aux informations pertinentes, notamment sur des textes réglementaires et les procédures d'importation et d'exportation et de transit des marchandises. Donc, ces informations sont désormais centralisées dans le portail d'information commerciale où l'adresse a été communiquée. Tout cela, évidemment, tous ces acquis sont rendus possibles grâce à l'appui, en tout cas très consistant, de l'Alliance mondiale de facilitation des échanges. Donc, appui mis en œuvre par la GIZ, qui a mobilisé des partenaires, des experts nationaux et internationaux que nous saluons ici, en tout cas qui ont beaucoup travaillé, aussi bien dans les aspects techniques de conception des outils, formation, gestion du changement et de communication. Là, nous voulons profiter de l'occasion pour remercier en tout cas tous ces acteurs, je veux dire l'Alliance mondiale de facilitation des échanges, pour ce projet quand même novateur. Nous apprécions véritablement sa juste valeur. Nous vous remercions infiniment. Sans oublier également la GIZ et Jobs en tant qu'agence de mise en œuvre, qui a su mobiliser en tout cas des experts compétents et mérites, que je voudrais même saluer ici. Je pense déjà à Amin du Maroc, à les experts nationaux qui sont au niveau du Sénégal, au niveau de Guinée. En tout cas, tout le staff de la GIZ, ils ont beaucoup appuyé et présentement, en tout cas, la digitalisation est en train d'être réalisée au niveau du Sénégal. Et aujourd'hui, là, au moment même où nous faisons, je participe à ce forum, il y a une simulation en cours avec les inspecteurs sanitaires et le secteur privé au niveau du Sénégal. Chacun en train de jouer la partition pour, en tout cas, réaliser cet objectif et de pouvoir envoyer dès décembre 2021 le premier certificat sanitaire électronique.
Merci, M. NDIAYE. Merci,
Nous
M.
vous
NDIAYE.
remercions beaucoup. Merci, j'en ai fini. Merci beaucoup.
Merci beaucoup. Merci beaucoup. I will switch over back to English. I understand there has been a couple of technical difficulties for the translation. So maybe just to summarize briefly, Mr. NDIAYE was explaining to us the work that has been done in Senegal in the past months with regards to the establishment of the e-phytosanitary certificates, and that they will be launching the first certificate in December 2021. And he was explaining, some of the challenges with regards to implementing that, but also, how they are going about it. And he said that, they spent much of the moment on the manual system, they spend much of their time in authenticating documents, which is very time consuming. And bringing this into an electronic format will also help with transparency, and also help in terms of standardizing procedures, and they will very rapidly see benefit from the efforts that are being put into this into this initiative. So this is a view from on the ground in country. I think it's representative of many other countries which are going through this process. So what I will do now is pass it over to you, Sarah. You represent one of the largest companies in the world with regards to food distribution. It'd be really interesting to find out from you how you see these such initiatives and how does it benefit your organization? Sarah, up to you.
Thanks so much, Philippe. I think what you'll find is there's an awful lot of commonality among many of the presenters today about the benefits of digitization, and particularly in this area of eFIDO. First, I just want to give a commercial to the Global Alliance for Trade Facilitation. Walmart has been engaged in this endeavor almost since its initiation, and we can think of no better opportunity to think about really how we implement trade capacity building through trade facilitation. It really does democratize trade because a company like Walmart has the resources to find ways around any barrier. But smaller companies, smaller producers really truly benefit when trade is made easy, when we reduce the time and the cost of trade, and when it's easier for you to understand what the rules are. And that's really what the Global Alliance is about. And eFIDO is a great opportunity to explain, I think, in very tangible ways, how we can go about helping countries, helping producers really access the benefits of trade, but also spread that benefit broadly. So today I'll just talk very briefly about our experience with eFIDO and our experience with the Alliance and why we're so excited about this. As Philippe mentioned, Walmart, many of you may know, we're in 24 countries around the world, but we're actually primarily a grocer in many of those countries. In the United States, over half of our revenues come from food, and that's higher in many of our international markets. And so we are moving quite a bit of produce and flowers and other products across borders every single day. We also, in many of those markets, source primarily from those markets. But if you think about being a grocer, many of our customers would want seasonal produce. So whether it's bananas or berries or tomatoes or peppers, they're not available throughout the year. We have to import those products as well as specialty products in our markets in year round. And so what we tend to see, at least in the United States, is we have significant amount of containers coming in, shipments throughout, largely through the winter months, over between 300 and 500 shipments each month coming in of these particular products. And each one of those products has to have a sanitary and phytosanitary significant certification with them. Prior in the last years, of those products, we've had about 87 certification requests. And what that means is CBP will say to you, I want to see the actual document. I want to know the origin of the document. I want to verify the document. And what that means for us is we've got to go back, work with our expeditors if they're expediting, go back to the original producers and get that certification if it's coming along as a paper cert. And what that translates to is at least 24 hours to get that, if not 2 to 3 days. So if you calculate that by 87 times, that means you've stopped your shipments, which denigrates the quality of the product, but also adds cost to the shipment. What we're excited about with eFIDO, and I think you're going to hear everybody say this, is it's a real-time transaction. And so you can actually, if there's a question, if there's any problem with the certification, you can go back and amend it real time. It also helps to ensure transparency, and these are going to be very similar themes, reduce any threat of counterfeit, enhance accuracy, and create a real-time transaction. What we're seeing actually though in implementation is it sounds easy, but getting everybody aligned into the system on all the ports and all the partner agencies can be quite complex. And so that's why we're excited about the work of the Global Alliance, because as we go from country to country and think about how you implement IT systems, how you train different partners on all of the systems that it takes? How do you make sure all of the different ports, and what we've seen in the United States from port to port, there's different levels of familiarity with eFIDO and with actually accepting all the way through the system as opposed to a PDF system, that we have to do a lot of training on the systems to make sure that everybody in the chain understands how it's used, how it can function, and how to make sure that everybody in the chain is actually taking advantage of this. But with the Alliance, as we build this expertise, it creates an opportunity to go country to country with lower transaction costs and creates a real model of expertise that we can bring to other countries. At Walmart, we've been thinking a lot about digitization as part of a broader initiative to enhance rule of law globally. And so it's important to have these proof of concepts to show when we actually work with a system that's a global system that can be harmonized globally, how it benefits all participants, governments, private sector, producers, all along the chain. And so one of the benefits here too is as we gain confidence in the eFIDO system, we have one harmony to having countries each thinking about doing their own thing, which really is quite difficult if you think about it in creating and all of the benefits that we're seeing. And so we're quite high on this initiative. I'm happy to talk a little bit more about our experiences, but I'll turn it back to Philippe and the other participants and hopefully have some question and answer. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Sarah. Very nice to see the angle from the private sector, which in the end is the end beneficiary of this, right? I always say, you know, if it wasn't for the private sector, there would not be any trade. So in the end, it's important that the private sector is involved in this so that they benefit, but they can also contribute, because the private sector needs to be part of the solution. It's not just up to governments to implement this. This has got to be a joint effort. And from an alliance perspective, we put the accent on this to make sure that both government and private sector are really working hand in hand to get the best possible results. Beth, I'll pass it over to you. You are overseeing this initiative from the FAO perspective. From where we sit, we've been very impressed with the work that's been done by the IPPC, not only technically, but in terms of the collaborative effort, the collaborative spirit in which we have been working. And personally, what I love with the system is that it's a simple, robust system. It doesn't try and be the most sophisticated system in the world. It just needs to work. And in the end, that is what we need. So in that sense, I'm very happy with the way that this is working. But I'll pass it over to you, because I would love to get your views from where you stand, how you see this initiative. I mean, you have lived through this, and perhaps what are the plans of FAO and IPPC in this regard?
Sure. Thank you, Philip. And thanks to the Global Alliance for putting this really important session together. And it's been a pleasure to listen to the other panelists. Again, it's I think sometimes the hardest job is going last in a panel like this, because oftentimes you just want to say, yes, ditto, I agree. But I fully support and am actually very pleased as well of all of the support I think that is being offered to this really important solution that is indeed hosted by the IPPC here at FAO. I would just say, and I think I get to say this a bit, as still a newcomer to FAO. I've been in my role for about 18 months now, and I do oversee the IPPC and have responsibility for this. So I'm getting to learn every day about the important contributions that the eFIDO solution and its supporters are bringing. But I would also say, having come from outside of FAO, having come from the private sector before coming here, I can recognize that oftentimes FAO hasn't always been known for speed, for simplicity, for collaboration with the private sector, or maybe even always very innovative tools and technology. We are working to change that. I'll talk a little bit about some some of that in my comments. But I just say that as a stage setting because indeed many of us here in the organization have realized what a model the ePhyto solution is for so many other types of contributions and I think platforms that FAO and other multilateral agencies can now model from. So again, a bit of just a note to everyone to thank them for recognizing what a contribution this has been. But it is very much an important time for us to, I think, reflect overall on the status of the world trade system and how we can indeed enhance its resilience, despite the reverberating impacts that Stephan had mentioned of the COVID-19 pandemic. And what I am especially pleased to see with today's panel and the outstanding speakers who have each brought us very important points of view and experiences is that this is indeed proving to be an incredibly collaborative effort on digital trade opportunities that brings together government, partner, international organizations, and the private sector. And I think here today, everyone has really underlined the importance of investing in innovation and promoting effective partnerships. And all of that while bringing us to, I think, the resiliency and the facilitation of trade is also about helping us all achieve an even higher goal of achieving the 2030 Agenda and the Sustainable Development Goals. In fact, we need to reflect on trade, I think, beyond COVID-19 to make sure that we tackle so many of the ongoing and persistent challenges to global agri-food systems. We all know that the number of undernourished people in the world continues very sadly to rise, with in 2020 as many as 811 million people facing hunger. And to make things worse, the COVID-19 restrictions did very clearly limit the ability of countries to trade quickly and provide the much needed food resources when and where they were needed most. And so to meet this additional challenge, we have recognized that a number of countries are beginning to change the way they work. We are now simplifying the way that we trade in order to ensure that we also minimize the risk of introducing harmful organisms, other pests, and as has been mentioned more critically, that we minimize the trade in fraudulent products as well. And all of this to just echo what has been said, which is why international cooperation is so essential. It's really important that we continue to work together to safeguard human, animal, and plant health by ensuring the full application of SPS measures. And so the digitization of the phytosanitary certificates as a part of the ePhyto solution is certainly a very important step in that direction. And I think, as has already been noted, the momentum around the solution is certainly going in the right direction. The ePhyto solution is being used on a daily basis now in 58 countries, with another 45, including Senegal, as we heard from Abdoulaye, on their way to being fully on board. And so overall, more than 100,000 e-certificates are being exchanged between countries each and every month. And I'd hazard to say that we could be on a path to 100,000 being exchanged every day. A major part of this success has been the willingness of countries to collaborate, even in the face of some of the implementation challenges. Some of those, again, we heard in Abdoulaye's comments regarding Senegal's adoption to introduce ePhyto. Let me mention, though, just a few other, I think, encouraging examples of countries engaged in the ePhyto solution. Chile and Argentina are working together to be the first of many to fully implement paperless trade in plants and plant products. Fiji has also provided guidance to other countries in the Southwest Pacific region. Uganda has presented its case study in numerous webinars on eFIDO implementation, and Sri Lanka, along with many others, continue to provide us and colleagues many suggestions for enhancement. So just a few call outs there to really, I think, make the point that countries, national governments who are very engaged in implementing the eFIDO solution clearly, I think, are recognizing and do very genuinely feel that they are a part of the continued improvement process of the solution. And I think that too is a very important aspect of this, that we don't view the solution as a static tool. Rather, it should always be a very dynamic and very flowing process. But our trade facilitation efforts, I would say, still need to be a bit more systemic. And so to do that, we need to continue to intensify digitalization in agri-food systems. And I would go so far as to also say that this process should not stop with plants and plant products. The Codex Alimentarius Commission and the World Organization for Animal Health, the OIE, have already undertaken studies on digitizing their certificates. And so perhaps a topic for further conversation would be whether our two SPS sisters team up and collaborate to build on eFIDO and move towards an overarching eSPS solution. I think that could be perhaps a worthwhile effort. FAO is committed to harnessing the power of digital technologies. And to this end, our e-agriculture website is a global community of practice for people to exchange information, ideas, and resources on the use of digital innovation in agriculture. And on top of this, our new strategic framework, our 10-year strategic plan, as we call it, which has just been put in place, includes program priority areas dedicated to more accessible digital technologies. Its aim is to enhance market opportunities, productivity, and resilience for farmers and producers, with a focus on ensuring affordable and equitable access for poor and vulnerable rural communities. And FAO is committed to strengthening its ability to integrate innovative technologies into agri-food systems through our new private sector engagement strategy, which is truly setting in place a new way of collaborating in our organization. So to achieve all of this, just to underscore, I think the commitment of all of us as stakeholders is really key here. And we look forward to building on our existing cooperations, including, Philip, with our very successful partnership with the Global Alliance. But we know that working together as FAO, national governments, sister organizations, and the private sector is what's really needed to enhance digital trade processes, and ultimately for all of us to increase the resilience of agri-food systems and to better face both the current and even future challenges that may yet be unknown. So I want to again thank everybody for bringing us together, for those who are participating in the forum, and really look forward to the discussion to follow. Back over to you.
Thank you very much, Beth, for these details, which are fascinating to see, you know, how you are living the eFIDO initiative, and you know, how you go about things, and especially what are your plans going forward, because I think there's a couple of elements here. One is the whole notion of scale up. I mean, there is, you know, you've shared with us some numbers which are really impressive, and from what I know are increasing exponentially. So, you know, this train is on the way. The question is now, how do we scale up for these other 120 documents? You're a trailblazer in this domain. So what can be done? Maybe at this stage, for the participants, just to let you know that you can send us some questions. There's a few questions that have come in already, but if you have any specific questions, by all means, enter them into the system, and then we'll see whether we have time to answer them. Maybe Sarah, from your end, as a private sector company that is moving a lot of food and perishables around the world, and within this notion of scaling up, is it would you be able to share with us, where you think the priorities should be going forward? What are the blockages that you are seeing from a documentary perspective? I know, at the Alliance, at the steering group of the Alliance, we have been discussing digitalization and automation, not necessarily from a country perspective, but maybe it's worth looking at it from a documentary perspective. And using the model of the ePhyto, are there any other documents or any other areas where you feel that more a focus should be brought?
So Philippe, I think from our perspective, the holy grail is really the single window. How do you digitize to make sure that all of the documentation that you need is coming in a digital way? But I think what we've seen in our experience, particularly in the US and others, is that it's hard to do it all at once. And so starting and building the right systems and making sure CBP or the customs authorities have a good sense of how the digitization is going to work, and then bringing it out to all of the other partner government agencies is important, because I think the complexity, people sometimes underestimate the complexity of when you're importing lots of different products with lots of different requirements, how many different government agencies have eyes on those shipments. And so that's why I think it's important in this context of ePhyto and others is, how are we building out the right systems around the right products? So if you're doing, produce, for example, how are we making sure that all of the systems and processes are going in the right way to all those partner government agencies, and everybody's building the systems on board in the right way? I think, certainly we have seen a massive advantage in terms of our own digitization to be able to lower our open rate at the borders to make sure we have confidence in the shipments that are going through and that we can track and trace all the way back. But it has taken a significant investment on our part as well, to be able to have those systems and processes on our side. And so I won't give you a specific, like it's this document or this document, but I do think we need to understand the complexity, build the strong foundation, and then build out to all the partner government agencies, and then move throughout effectively. I will say the other thing we would see, even though the US as a strong supporter of ePhyto has been way in the forefront, we still have challenges at particular ports where they are only accepting the PDF version and haven't gone fully into the system. And so I think it just shows the importance of training throughout the system to make sure there's full functionality. And if this is happening in the United States, it's the kind of thing that we need to be taking into consideration as we move these products globally.
Thanks very much, Sarah. That's very useful information, and also information that we'll be able to incorporate into our thinking at the Alliance. Monsieur Ndiaye, je vais vous poser une question en relation, enfin c'est une question qui m'arrive ici sur mon ordinateur. C'est une question en relation avec la relation avec le secteur privé. Vous nous avez parlé de simulations que vous êtes en train de faire sur place. Dans votre esprit, comment est-ce que le secteur privé devrait contribuer à ces efforts? Est-ce que c'est possible de nous donner un peu plus d'informations sur comment vous vous y prenez au Sénégal?
Merci beaucoup pour cette question très pertinente. Ici, au niveau du Sénégal, il faut dire qu'il y a effectivement une organisation qui était déjà là, parce qu'avec le secteur privé, on a un peu rendu obligatoire la déclaration d'activité au niveau de l'ONPV, ce qui nous a permis en tout cas de les enregistrer officiellement, et évidemment de les catégoriser selon le risque qu'ils peuvent représenter pour le commerce, et de définir un plan de contrôle. Et là, j'avoue que nous sommes effectivement dans un partenariat, dans un cadre de dialogue privé. On a beaucoup réfléchi sur ces questions, même avant vraiment qu'on ait cet appui de l'Alliance mondiale de facilitation des échanges. Le secteur privé s'est impliqué carrément dans cette dynamique. Parce qu'en réalité, ils se sont rendus compte, effectivement, avec, disons, le truc manuel, disons, les procédures papier, ça leur faisait perdre beaucoup de temps. Effectivement, ils ont tous adhéré, en tout cas, à cette nouvelle démarche de digitalisation des procédures. Ils sont même à la limite plus engagés, hein, très engagés par rapport à cette démarche. Et certainement n'hésiteront pas à y contribuer également. Parce que j'avoue que même pour certaines séances de sensibilisation, je ne peux pas, peut-être pas pour le cas de mais quand ils voient de l'intérêt, ils n'hésitent pas à se mobiliser pour en tout cas dégager des ressources pour effectivement appuyer quelquefois les services techniques. Ça, je pense que cela va continuer comme cela parce qu'ils y trouvent leur compte en fait. Parce que je me dis qu'avec la procédure très longue qui était là, si on parvient à réduire ces procédures, c'est des gains quand même profitables à l'économie du Sénégal. Comme je le disais tantôt, pour quelques filières, peut-être notre culture et l'arachide, il y a plus de 210 milliards de francs CFA en termes de valeur d'exploitation. Si effectivement on parvient à mettre de manière durable, en tout cas, cette digitalisation, c'est que nous allons aller plus vite. Et là également, c'est des rentrées pour le pays. Et en tout cas, nous sommes tous engagés avec le secteur privé dans un cadre de dialogue public-privé. Et là, je pense qu'au moment venu, l'opérationnalisation complète en tout cas, de cette digitalisation, je suis après sûr qu'ils ne seront pas à contribuer n'importe comment dans ce processus parce qu'ils y trouvent leur compte. Et là, heureusement, on a une forte coopérative fédérative de tous les acteurs de notre culture ici au niveau du Sénégal. Donc, tout le monde y a adhéré et souvent, nous nous retrouvons périodiquement pour non seulement renforcer les capacités, mais également pour fixer les orientations, disons, pour aller de l'avant et puis mieux placer nos produits sur des segments de marché porteurs. Merci.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur Ndiaye. I have a number of questions that are coming in. So there's one question around harmonization. You know, I think one of the success factors of the work that's been done by IPPC is that a lot of upstream work was done on harmonization to make sure that the data is harmonized around the world. And it seems, you know, that is one of the challenges that we have going forward with other types of certificates and documents. And within the UN system, I know UNECE and UNCFACT has been very active on this for many years. Beth, do you have any insight with regards to this on how you're going about harmonization and how you're working with the other UN organizations to be able to maybe accelerate the process? Because I know it's quite a time-consuming process.
Yeah, it's a very, very important point, and I would say that I don't think we probably are moving quite as quickly as many would like, but it's a priority for us. I'm hearing a bit of echo. Can everybody hear me all right?
Yeah, we hear you loud and clear.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. We are working obviously with the UN partners, especially in many other countries around the world, especially with UNCTAD, to make sure that we do as much as we can to integrate with their different systems. But I would say probably to start, there's a real focus on making sure that we do our best, as I think Sarah had referenced, that we are also integrating with custom single window systems. You know, very much being focused at country level. Already, eFIDO has linked to national single windows in Nepal, Benin, South Africa, the US, Argentina, and even others. And so we're highly focused on making sure that we do this as a priority, especially in smaller island states where the operations are oftentimes handled by very small staffs or their roles oftentimes have to be shared. But indeed, this is a really heavy lift inside the UN system, but clearly there would be, I think, huge cost savings in harmonizing these systems. One of, I think, the opportunities that we also very much have with the success of eFIDO and and especially as we're moving into further and further developments of the overall reform process of the UN, is to make sure that FAO, IPPC have opportunities to really put this solution more in front of resident coordinators and UN country teams at the country level, to make sure we elevate the narrative and the story around the solution. I think education and advocacy is probably one of the most important features right now that we can't lose sight of. I think too often we find ourselves into, again, the continued enhancements and improvement of the solution, and we sometimes lose sight of the very important messaging and promotion that needs to take place in a number of developing countries, especially where they are really working with very limited resources to try to bring implementation together.
Thank you very much, Beth. We're slowly coming to the end of this session, but maybe Stephan, from your end, you, as the German government has been one of the leading donors in terms of supporting the TFA process and trade facilitation in general. Are you able just to tell us briefly from where you sit, how do you see the level of success of the work so far? And is there a certain direction you would like to see the technical assistance providers and all the players in the ecosystem go in the future?
Well, first of all, thank you so much to our speakers, which was very enlightening for me to learn very practical about how things are going on the ground. We have seen that things are really working, and now we have to scale up. There's really thing which is going well on the ground, and there's no reason not to scaling up. So that would be my first and most important point. I did like very much the point Beth made, that there are interlinkages with a lot of other issues in the field of the 2030 agenda. For example, fight against hunger, perhaps even greening. Trade is an issue here, as we are talking about perishable food. So to come to an end, before handing you the last word, Philip, thank you so much for moderating us today. Philip Isler is the director of the Global Alliance and is doing really a wonderful job. Then thanks to our interpreters, thanks to all our panelists, and finally to all our partners in the Global Alliance for Trade Facilitation. So Philip, you've got the last word.
Thank you very much, Stephan. Look, it's been a great hour having a discussion, I was going to say a chat with the four of you, and really get to the bottom of these efforts in eFITO work. It's wonderful to see the progress of this, and I would say the acceleration of this. When we started getting involved in this was maybe 18 months ago. If I see when I look at the difference with what we have now, is just quite astounding. And it's thanks to all of you, right? To the private sector, to the international organizations, to the local NPPOs on the ground, and the donors, of course. So I think amongst ourselves, if we can continue collaborating in this way, it will be fantastic to see where we stand, in the next 5 or 10 years, because I think there's a lot to be done. There's a lot of goodwill. There's a lot of momentum. So despite the whole COVID situation, and the nice thing is we haven't hardly discussed COVID today. So it's nice to have had that slightly different view on things. So let's sit down again here in 5 years' time, maybe even before, and see how much progress we will have made. Thank you very much, Stephan. Thank you, Beth. Thank you, Abdoulaye. Thank you, Sarah. It's been great having you, and hopefully see you in person sometime in Geneva. Thank you.
Thanks, Philippe.
Thank you.